It's Wednesday, May 30th. Welcome to CT Pulse on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Chaplinsky, and much of the political focus in the state has been on the governor's race. But today we're taking a look at some of the local legislative races. Now, several Democrats are stepping forward for seats long held by Republicans in Fairfield County. And while Governor Dannel Malloy is unpopular, will President Donald Trump's popularity have any impact in some of these state races that we're seeing? Now, here to discuss some of that with me today is our Trumbull Times editor, Donald Eng. Don, as always, happy to have you on.
Happy to be on. Thanks, Kate.
Yeah. Now, of course, Trumbull is never boring politically, and your state races for state rep and senate are also shaping up to be interesting as well. Let's start with some of the challengers that have stepped forward. So you have Sujata Gadkar-Wilcox, and she's going to be challenging David Ritigliano for the 123rd district in the State House of Representatives. Now, Ritigliano has held that seat since 2012. Now, what can you tell us about Gadkar-Wilcox?
Well, she's an interesting person. She's a political newcomer. I think she ran for Board of Ed one time, did not get a seat, but she's a relative political newcomer. She teaches political science at Quinnipiac, also a lawyer herself in addition to that. So, and like many of the people that we're seeing running for office, a lot of these first-time candidates, she's just kind of gotten inspired by this whole idea of a new kind of politics. That's kind of going to be a theme for a lot of the new Democratic challengers. Is the era of civility, things like that, returning that to politics. So that's clearly going to be her strategy. Uphill struggle. That's a real tough seat for a Democrat to win the 123rd in Trumbull.
Yeah, and Ritigliano's been popular there.
He is. I mean, he's someone that's going to be difficult to really pin that political nastiness tag on, because he doesn't really have a track record of being that. He tends to be an approachable guy. He's fiscally and relatively socially conservative, but he's an approachable guy. He's personable. It's going to be hard to make that stick, but we'll see what happens. This is going to be a very interesting political season.
Now, staying on state representative, representing Trumbull, the 134th district, now this includes Trumbull and Fairfield, Ashley Gaudiano secured the Democratic nomination, so she will be challenging Laura Devlin. So we're seeing another female Democrat step forward for a seat here, which seems to be
another
a trend.
relative political newcomer. Gaudiano won a seat on the Trumbull Town Council just this past November, and then almost immediately declared to run for the 134th district seat. She's another one, relative political newcomer, and another one, kind of like where they make a new generation of leaders as kind of the political aspect there for some of these candidates. She is another interesting case, because in her campaign so far, she has really kind of embraced, the dirty word, progressive, liberal philosophy. She has really embraced those, and also she has made prominent mention of something that's been on a lot of people's minds lately, which is gun laws. And what's interesting is that the 134th district traditionally is Republican, but Tom Cristiano of Trumbull did win that seat, I think, in 2004. And interestingly enough, that same year was the year of the Donnelly case in Fairfield, and gun laws were a fairly prominent issue in that campaign against Jack Stone. So I mean, while again I think she would be a long shot, not impossible for a Democrat to take that seat.
Now, kind of switching over to state senate, there's a seat that represents Trumbull, about 1/3 of Bridgeport, the 22nd district, and a part of Monroe, now that has been held for a long time by a Democrat. But you do have a town Republican, Richard Deacon, 31 years old. He's going to challenge Marilyn Moore, who's from Bridgeport.
Yes. Now, that seat was traditionally Republican. Lee Scarpetti held that seat for the longest time from Trumbull. That seat first went Democrat in 1998, and it has pretty much stayed Democrat since then, with the exception of Robert Russo serving a partial term. But Richard Deacon, Planning and Zoning Commissioner in Trumbull, he has an interesting backstory, because it's an interesting district because it has the city and the two suburban towns, and both sides. The city is obviously leans left, the suburban towns lean right, and the campaigns traditionally try to run up the score on their home territory and then kind of hold on for dear life as the results come in from the other town. Now, Richard Deacon, he's a Trumbull guy, but he's a teacher at Bassick High School, has been for 10 years, and he's worked there for 10 years. He's been a teacher for 5 years. He's a former football coach there, and he's convinced that he can resonate with Bridgeport voters. As he said when I spoke to him, he said, Connecticut's turnaround needs to start in the city, and it needs to start with education in the inner cities and improving, some of the basic quality of life issues that a lot of the constituents in the 22nd district face. He says that he's dedicated his life to the children that live in the district, particularly those that go to Bassick High School. So he's another one. It's a tough district for a Republican to win. That district used to be almost 50-50. It's leaning left a lot more in recent years than it did previously, but he could be the best Republican hope to win that seat in a long time.
Now that's interesting because I know when Senator Moore was first elected, people in Trumbull worry, is she going to represent us? Because she's from Bridgeport, and for a long time that seat had been held by Anthony Musto, who was a Democrat from Trumbull.
That she unseated in a primary.
She unseated in a primary, so kind of interesting there. I wonder how the turnout will be in Trumbull for that.
Yeah, well, he gets a break because this is an off-year election. Bridgeport traditionally turns out more in presidential election years. I mean, everyone turns out more in presidential years, but Republicans in the suburbs tend to maintain their voting habits more so in off years versus the city voters that come out once every 4 years. The suburbs are a little bit better about voting on off years. So, like I said, this is probably their best shot in a decade to take that seat back. Marilyn Moore, though, a very popular incumbent. She actually, she, as you said, unseated a popular Democrat in a primary to win that seat. So, she works hard for that district, or according to the suburbs, for the Bridgeport part of that district, right. But very popular in a very reliably Democratic voting district.
Now, before we move on from Trumbull entirely, just have to ask about Tim Herbst, gubernatorial candidate who will primary in August. What's the latest with his campaign? Well,
the latest with his campaign is he has challenged his opponents to a series of 10 debates. I think they've already got 3 scheduled. He wants 10.
A lot.
Yes. Well, as we were saying, Lincoln Douglas had 7. 10 is a lot. But he's gotten a little bit of support on that. Candidate Steve Upsitnik, the third, the 3 Republicans in the primary now. It's Herbst, Upsitnik, and Mark Boughton. Steve Upsitnik has said that he will debate as many times as anyone else wants. He's certainly on board with a large number of debates. And particularly for him, that's important because he needs to get in front of voters as often as he can. Right. He's relatively unknown compared to the other 2. He really needs as much face time, as much camera time as he can get. Mark Boughton, not so much on board with that. He did tell the Hartford Courant that I think his quote was that our campaign won't cave to every Timmy temper tantrum, and that and he said that that Tim is trying to run everyone else's schedule. To which Tim responded that that Mark Boughton had a meltdown about it, but that may be a bit of a stretch of the term meltdown, but that's. Tim stirs the pot. He's someone that he really likes that political environment where people get kind of riled up, and certainly he said he wants to do in Hartford what he's done in Trumbull, and in that aspect at least, certainly on course. On course
there. Okay. All right. Well, moving on. I want to keep Don with me, but talking about a couple other interesting races that we're seeing that some of our other local papers are covering. Now, a Democrat has emerged to challenge State Senator Tony Boucher in the 26th district. Now, this district covers Wilton, Weston, Westport, Ridgefield, New Canaan, Bethel, and Reading. Now, Boucher has held that seat since 2008. It's a strongly Republican area. But now Will Haskell, who's just 21 years old and graduated college this month, Georgetown University, he's a New Canaan resident and a Westport native. Now, interestingly, Haskell raised enough money in just 72 hours to qualify for public financing, and he's an endorsed candidate of Run for Something. Now, this is an organization that supports what they call young, diverse progressives to run for down ballot races across the country. Now, in an interview with our own Wilton Bulletin, Haskell mentions wanting to run following President Donald Trump's election, something that we're seeing with other candidates who are running in these state races, talking about how they feel about national politics. He said in part to the Wilton Bulletin, "I woke up the morning after Trump's election and thought, this is a moment of crisis. It's incumbent on every citizen to build a version of America we can all be proud of," he told the Bulletin. He also went on to say that he's severely disappointed in the 26th district's staunchly conservative representation in the state Senate. He said, "This isn't Bernie Sanders territory, but it's not Donald Trump territory either." So interesting, he's really kind of bringing up the national conversation around President Donald Trump and related to this state Senate race.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see him winning that district just because it is so reliably Republican, but I think that is a theme we're going to see a lot. The idea of this proxy election, Democrats are going to essentially paint every Republican as Donald Trump, and Republicans clearly will paint every Democrat as Dan Malloy, and then we see who's less popular in Connecticut come election day, at least among the voters that turn out. It's a really interesting story, and he does make an interesting point about some of these Fairfield County districts. You know, they vote Republican, but socially they're not especially conservative.
Donald Trump did not do well in a lot of these Fairfield County towns.
He really didn't, which kind of leads me to believe that the Democratic hopes might have some basis to them if they can successfully paint their Republican opponents as Donald Trump proxies.
You know, Don, when we were here in November 2017 for the municipal elections, I found it so interesting just how Democrats swept so many races in these towns that have been Republican held for so long. And these are municipal races, and I don't think that party lines matter so much on the municipal level in most towns. But it seemed like people were really voting based on their reactions to national politics.
It does seem that way, and I've actually asked Tim Herbst about that a couple of times. Is he concerned? It's an off-year election, which tends to favor Republicans, but also we have a president that's not popular in Connecticut, which you would think would favor Democrats. As Tim said, Donald Trump is not popular in Connecticut, but he's not the least popular politician in Connecticut. That would be Dan Malloy. So that would, to your point there, I do think that that Fairfield County, it seems kind of it seems counterintuitive to say, but heavily Republican Fairfield County could be vulnerable to a handful of Democrats winning. I don't think it'll be a great blue wave in Fairfield County, but as you mentioned with the with local elections, we saw Democrats winning local elections in traditional Republican strongholds. Now, clearly, a Board of Ed candidate standing in your driveway talking about the issues with you is one thing. A state Senate race is another, but. But if the Democrats can hold on to the momentum, if they can kind of build on the enthusiasm that seems present in their voters, we could see a couple of upsets.
All right, one more race I'm following. This one's in Ridgefield. I'm interested to see what happens here. So Ridgefield Democrats have nominated Amy Berger-Gervallo as their candidate for the 111th district in the House of Representatives. This was just last Thursday night. Now, Berger-Gervallo will challenge John Fry. He's the Republican incumbent, and he's held that seat since 1999. He's run often in the past without a challenger. He's been very popular there. Now, interesting to note, Berger-Gervallo, as we've mentioned with some of these other candidates, was a local organizer for the Women's March. She worked with another resident, Jessica Mancini, and they provided buses for more than 200 people to attend the Women's March on Washington, D.C. in January 2017. That was around the time of President Donald Trump's inauguration. She also organized buses to this year's anniversary March on Washington in January, which was held in New York City, as well as protests against gun violence in Hartford as part of the March for Our Lives. And it's been interesting to see, our Ridgefield Press does a great job with coverage all around, but there's been a lot of reaction to this announcement. It seems like a lot of people are excited about it. So we also have some video from her official announcement taken by reporter Peter Yankowski. Let's take a look.
Field is my home. It's a place where I've raised my kids, where I've found friends who are more like family, and discovered a community that has so much to offer. It's a town that's afforded me multiple opportunities to work with children and teens, whether as a special ed paraeducator right here in town at Ridgebury, or as a coach and mentor for students, or children with disabilities in our own local soccer club, or even as a yoga instructor for young athletes, and as a community volunteer. It's a place where I've had the chance to meet and partner with and learn from so many of our community members and activists as co-founder of the Women's March in the Ridgefield chapter. I love this town, I love its people, and I love its values. No matter what I've done in my life, I have embraced responsibility. As a professional in corporate restaurants and retail establishments, I had a responsibility to customers, to employees, and to shareholders. As an educator and working in schools as a volunteer, my responsibility is to students, to parents, and to an administration. Responsibility is inherent to the job of state representative. Your state representative has a fiscal responsibility. In 20 years, the economy of our state and town have changed dramatically. Given these economic challenges, we must find new ways to raise revenue, to increase jobs, to keep young people here, and to balance the budget. None of this will be easy, but the solutions are going to come from honest dialogue, not from partisan rhetoric. Your state representative also has a social responsibility. I think of the students who organized the National School Walkout. A bunch of them are back here. They didn't take on this mission because they were only concerned about themselves or only concerned about Ridgefield High School. They did it because they wanted to take this movement and bring it to the entire nation. And what an example that they've set for the rest of us in doing that. So proud. I will ensure that the important social issues of today, income equality, a clean environment, protecting a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions, protecting our children and communities from gun violence. I'll make sure that these issues and the people behind them have a strong voice in Hartford. Your state representative also has a personal responsibility. The responsibility to show up, to listen, and to be there for all residents. Showing up means making time for you, scheduling regular opportunities to meet, and really listening to your answers. Being present. Whether you're a senior, a homeowner, a small business owner, or the employees who work for those small businesses, you deserve to be heard. You deserve a representative who's accessible and who's engaged. There's another page. I'm a firm believer also in collaboration. I don't want to exercise power, I want to utilize strength. Strength is about listening. Utilizing strength is about you guys. As your state representative, I'll be a bridge between your ideas and action. There's no denying there are difficult choices which will need to be made to benefit Connecticut. But collaboration, guided by voters, can lead to solutions for the long term without relying on short-term fixes. The most important thing I would do as your state rep, the greatest responsibility I would have, would be to actually represent. It means I stand up. I will stand up for every one of you, not just those who agree with what's coming out of my mouth. It means that you would have a voice and an advocate. And it means that I can't stop and I won't stop. I'll represent your ideas, your desires, and your values. Ridgefield deserves a state representative in tune with today, not with the past. You deserve someone who recognizes the social issues and sentiments of today, someone who will fight for you and our neighbors and not be bound by the politics of the past or the occupant of the White House. That is why I'm running for state representative. In the 24 weeks we have between now and November, I intend to visit you, to personally speak with you and learn what you really desire, to really hear you. I intend to work hard and earn your trust and your vote. So talk to me. I'm listening, because as your state representative, that's my responsibility. It would be my honor to represent you all in Hartford. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. Let's go forward and let's win.
And thanks to our Ridgefield Press for that video from that announcement. So Don, we are seeing some themes here. What would you say some of these themes are?
Well, the big one we said was Trump versus Malloy. Whose supporters, more importantly, whose opponents are going to turn out in greater numbers. The other thing, young people and women really getting involved. The three races I'm covering in Trumbull, 4 of the 6 candidates are women, and all 3 challengers are relatively young and relative political newcomers. So those are the 3 big things I would look at: women, young people, and the Trump-Malloy dynamic.
I know, and we say this all the time, but I can't say enough how important it is that you kind of follow these races and find out who the candidates are. And I know our newspapers will be covering this, we'll be talking about it on air, but it's just really important to stay informed, just as it is in the municipal level, also in who's going to represent you in Hartford. It's important. So.
Yeah, people tend to come out and vote in droves for the president, but when a water main breaks in front of your house, don't call the White House.
Exactly. All right, Don, thanks so much for joining me to talk about this.
Anytime, thanks.
All right, we're going to step out for a break, come back for some drawing conclusions with Doug Smith after this.
Spring is in bloom, and so are the deals at Honda of Westport's Dream Garage Spring Event. See and test drive the all-new 2018 Honda Clarity 110 MPG plug-in hybrid sedan. Stop in today and see why we've been named Deal Rater's Dealer of the Year for the 4th year running. Honda of Westport, where peace of mind is part of the deal. Get a fresh start to the new year by shaking up your meal routine. Walter Stewart's Market is your local source for a delicious selection of fresh and convenient salad shakers, like Southwest salad with chicken, Cobb with organic chicken, Power Vegan with fruit and quinoa, Greek salad with tabbouleh, and grilled shrimp with hominy. Grab one from our salad case or order from our deli today. Walter Stewart's Market, 229 Elm Street, New Canaan, or shop online at stewartsmarket.com.
Dr. Stephen Molinaro and Peter Healy of Family Practice Dentistry and Laser Dental Care have served Ridgefield for over 22 years. Experienced staff offer gentle drillless techniques, preventative care, and cosmetic procedures in a relaxed environment. Grateful for the community's trust and support through the years, new patients and their families are welcome. Call today.
I've had Newtown Savings Bank my whole life. You don't have to worry about talking to a machine. You're talking to real people. You're getting real help. I'm banking local, and I'm loving it.
Spring is in bloom.
Welcome back to CT Pulse on the HAN Network. It is time for some drawing conclusions with our editorial cartoonist, Doug Smith. Didn't you want me to draw some conclusions? No?
Well, it's a theme you're going to see in the cartoons this week, not what we meant.
All right, I like it. So let's get right into it. All right, tell us about this one up first.
Oh, that's just a little blurb for Darien, their second annual beach fest. Got a kid digging in the sand there.
Very well. The letters are very nice.
Yeah,
I don't
got
know
some
that I
real
could
detail
do that
with
so
that
well.
shovel. I don't know.
Yeah, really lovely. All right, up next, the Old Milford Diner is finally coming down.
I
I've been
know.
reading about this.
Yep.
So you do realize this place has been closed for years. Thought the pie was a bit stale.
Probably
Yeah.
had it under that glass dome, you know.
Oh, yeah, I guess that could keep it fresh for a little while. All right, up next, tell us food trucks and brewery ordinance. I know what this is for. Ridgefield, yes?
Ridgefield, yep.
Yeah, Ridgefield been having a battle over food trucks being allowed at breweries or not at certain
Exactly.
points. So you have the ordinance there as your roadblock. I like it.
Thank you.
All right, and tell us about this next one.
Oh, here we go. We got hurricane season coming up. So this is what I meant when they said that's not what it means. We got a guy, you know those hurricane evacuation signs?
Yes, they terrified me as a child.
I know.
If you go into Lordship in Stratford, those hurricane evacuation signs, it's like, does the water get this high? That's what we always thought as kids.
But they're always pointing straight up. I mean,
Yeah. I always thought it was like the water can get to here and then what are you going to do? All right, so coming up next, solar. Some towns' buildings may go solar.
Yep.
Who is this for?
That's New Canaan.
New
A
Canaan.
couple of their town buildings, so.
That must be expensive to build such a large
Yeah.
microscope, no?
Got a
All
giant
right.
ant, you could pop it with the magnifying glass.
All right, and up next, it looks like we have an Easton cartoon here. Tell us
Right,
about
they
this
got the
one.
cameras mounted on the vehicles, the new camera systems, so again, not what we had in mind.
That seems a little labor intensive too to
Right.
do it that way, but putting a lot of cameramen in
director
work, I
back there,
guess.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and I like this, a little Braveheart humor
Oh,
here.
this was actually, what town was that?
Ridgefield,
Ridgefield,
Scotland.
They were going to use this one, then they decided to go with the other one, but I threw it in here because I liked it.
A lot
So-
of not what we meant this week. I like
Right.
it. I like it. That's the theme of these cartoons.
William Wallace.
All right, I believe that's our last one.
Oh, that's it.
All right, Doug, as always, love having you on and
Okay.
drawing some conclusions.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Okay.
And we are going to wrap things up here on your CT Pulse. If you missed anything, you can catch us on demand later. And stay tuned for everything coming up on the HAN Network later today. We'll see you next time.